Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. My guest today is Lindsey Harrer. She's U.S. Head of Medical Strategic Engagement and Partnerships at EMD Serono. Easy for me to say. Lindsey, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, Tom. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I am excited. And guys, backstory. So Jim Hahn, if you remember, came on the show. We talked about thought leader liaisons, which was a great episode. He had made the introduction to Lindsay, and I'm excited to have her on. So before we get into that, we do have a sponsor. It is time to register for this year's Fierce Pharma Engage conference. It actually used to be Mass West. Big fan of Mass West and Mass East. I'm going to be there. It's going to be an amazing event. It's a little different this year. So it's a much larger event where Fierce is actually having different tracks. So they're going to have pharma marketing, PR, and communications, medical affairs, business development, and licensing. So it's going to be broken out a little bit, but amazing content, amazing speakers. This is going to take place in San Diego, April 29th through May 1st. So for more information, go to Fierce Pharma Engage 2025 and you could register. And I look forward to seeing you there. So, Lindsay, we're going to talk about the power of non-traditional KOL engagement, which I think is going to be an awesome conversation. To start, can you define what non-traditional KOL engagement, what that term actually means?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom, what it means to me and to my team is really leading from an HCP centric perspective or approach. It's really peeling back the layers of what's happening in the world of the HCP, understanding what are their opportunities, what are their challenges, what are the things they're facing on a daily basis, and really seeking to understand from a place of curiosity. It's as someone on my team says, who I think is absolutely brilliant, she describes it as beyond the transaction. You're really there to get to know them and to understand them. And so that's what it means to me.
So focus being on exclusively on them is what you're
On
saying.
them, yes, on their
Yeah,
world, on what is happening from a current trend perspective, what's happening from a future trend perspective in healthcare, in the healthcare ecosystem.
got
Really
it.
like seeking to understand what are their obstacles in their current environment.
And how does that differ from what we might call, so if that's the non-traditional, what would be the more standard way of KOL engagement?
Yeah, so the way that I look at it, especially if you're thinking about traditional MSL type of engagement or an MSL type of interaction,
Mhm.
it is typically aligned to the medical strategy, right? Medical affairs strategy or the strategic imperatives. So it's a situation where you're going in, you're often reacting to a question that the HCP has. You're looking for a way to communicate from a perspective of scientific exchange. You're going in with an objective that's pretty specific to something that they've either asked about, inquired about, told you that they have an interest in. You might be going in looking for an opportunity to generate some data with them or looking to fill some gaps if there's research gaps. So it's very, I would say, focused strategically on the medical affairs strategic imperatives.
Well, it makes sense because MSLs are giving these strategic objectives and that becomes the driver.
Exactly right.
And they
Exactly.
almost go in with that and that kind of guides and leads them into that engagement and the approach to that engagement. So what you're saying is not that you obviously need to keep the strategic objectives front and center, you keep them in mind, but you go from the standpoint of the KOL needs first and then work back. Is that a
Yeah, and Tom, so let me be very clear. Like we need MSLs to do exactly what I just described. We need them to go in and deliver on the science and to have that scientific conversation, to deliver the data, to answer questions, or really allow the HCP to share their concerns, and then we back that up with data. So we have to have that. I mean, that is a critical element of pharmaceutical engagement, right? And we need those strong MSLs to be able to deliver on the science. But what I'm suggesting is that you can do both. You can really seek to understand what is happening in the world of the HCPs that we're serving, and get to know them from a deeply human perspective, understand what makes them tick, and then also fill those needs through the strategic imperatives that you have to deliver on for the organization. You can do both, and it's not an either or. Much of the work that my team has executed around came from ideas that happened from exchanges in the field, because the TLL or the MSL or whoever was interfacing with that provider or healthcare professional really took the time to get to know what was important to them. And they brought those ideas and innovation back to the team or back to the organization internally to see what internal stakeholders could partner with us, to generate some new resources, to generate a new initiative, or collaborate with an HCP in a different way. And so you can do both, I guess, is my
Yeah.
encouragement.
Well, and let's talk about why this is important. It sounds important. It sounds feasible, but I'd love to hear from you, and why you think this is so important.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's happening in the current healthcare ecosystem is that healthcare providers are incredibly burnout. I've read statistics around moderate burnout is occurring in 60% of healthcare providers. That's
Wow.
that's exceptional.
Yeah.
And time is our most valuable currency. And so in order to stay relevant, in order to really have a meaningful interaction with HCPs, it has to be with an understanding of what's important to them and delivering on in a way that is, creating a value add for them. And so if you don't take the time to take a step back and get to know them, get to know what drives them, get to know why they went into medicine or into healthcare in the first place, what is keeping them from fulfilling, their dream, if you will? How are they approaching their day? Is it really a way? Are they approaching their day from the perspective of what they thought when they went into healthcare? What are the obstacles? And so when you take a step back and get to know people on that level, you can hear what's happening in their world, and you make yourself more relevant, you make your interaction more relevant, and you really create a meaningful dialogue and exchange that is on their terms. You're attuned to their needs. And that I think is incredibly important in the current environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we talked about the what and we talked about the why. Let's talk about the how. So how does this happen? What are some of the questions that MSLs should be asking KOLs in this non-traditional approach?
Yeah, I think you can start by asking, what was it that drew you to healthcare? What was it that drew you to the particular specialty that you're currently practicing in? What keeps you up at night? What are the things that, if you had more time in your day, what would you spend it doing within the scope of your practice? What's your biggest frustration? What is providing you joy as you treat patients? What is it about treating patients that you really enjoy, or this disease state that you really enjoy? What does success look like to you ultimately? And really, when you align on what is happening in their world, what is critical then is that you really take the time to actually listen. You're
Mm,
listening to how they're responding to you. You're listening with the perspective of, can I actually help? Can I actually do something, bring some innovation to this HCP or to their practice or to the healthcare ecosystem so that I can actually help, that we can do something of meaningful difference. It's not just listening and asking questions and providing lip service. It's
mm.
seeking solutions based on what you're hearing.
And it's like you said, those questions are all about them, their needs, their problems, what's keeping them up at night. So, I mean, it makes total sense. It's funny, I was doing a workshop recently, and one of the things that came up is, if you're on an interview and they ask you to sell them a pen, could be
Okay.
any interview, doesn't have to be a sales interview. It's just kind of a common thing.
Yeah,
And it's like all the, obviously all the questions that you would ask to uncover what that person would want in a pen. That's the whole strategy. But
that's right.
this guy broke it down he said, look, I'm going to break this down into one question. What's the most important thing to you in a pen? And once like the light bulb went off, it's like, What's the most important thing to you in really any situation? KOLs, what's the most important thing to you?
Right.
You have a one-on-one meeting with one of your team members. What's the most important thing you want to talk about?
Yeah.
That really gets to the core of what is on that person's mind at that time. So I'm adding that question, but it didn't come from me. Actually learned it in a workshop, and I think it's amazing. And I've been using it a lot. So I just wanted to mention that. But let's get back into how do you think an MSL can develop a strategy to personalize their communication and their approach for individual KOLs?
Again, I mean, to your point, it's very well taken, Tom. It's understanding what's important to them, right? And if you take the time to understand what's important to them, then you can personalize your approach through your resources, through education, through, really levering on everything that is available to the MSL that they can actually bring to the HCP around what they've identified as being important to them. The other thing I think is really important, as I mentioned, is if you uncover something that is important to them and there's something that's actionable in that you can, everything that my team has really worked on, or all of the initiatives that have come to the table through this work, is that it started with a spark of an idea through a discussion with an HCP. And it didn't just stop there, though. It wasn't just a dialogue. It wasn't lip service. It was, okay, let's think about how we can create solutions. Let's talk about how we can collaborate or develop resources or develop content, or show up in a different way based on what you're telling me. And so I think it's really finding the internal stakeholders in your organization to help you to deliver on what you've identified as an innovative solution based on your conversation with your HCP, because then they will realize that this is personal. You are taking what you've learned from them and you're actually solutioning around that and you're delivering for them. And so it becomes very personal when you ask for their input, when you ask for their collaboration on something, when they join you in that process. And so they can do that in a few different ways. One being, maybe you, for example, we just had an advisory board in the oncology space around healthcare provider burnout, seeking to understand what is happening from the burnout perspective, specifically in oncology. And so many people were interested in participating in this topic because we were seeking to understand, but we were also looking for solutions to help them in the current environment. And so when they realize that we're putting their insights into action, it becomes very personal to them. And we actually ask for their help along the way. So it's really a kind of joint effort to get to the heart of what's challenging them or what is interfering with their ability to practice medicine in the way that they want. And we are coming to the table with a partnership to really find a path forward. And that's what could be more personal than that.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
It does.
This makes complete sense, and I'm sure knowing the MSLs that are really good at this, um, anyone that hasn't been taking this approach I think is going to see a big difference. But what would you say are some of the challenges in this approach?
I think, Tom, if you're approaching HCPs from this lens, again, it can't just be lip service. It can't be a bait and switch. It can't be, let's talk about all these things that are, keeping you up at night or the things that are challenging you. And oh, by the way, now I want to switch gears and talk about the things that are important to me. And so it really has to be a genuine curiosity, an opportunity to listen, and then an opportunity to act. And I'm fortunate to work for an organization that actually invests in this type of work, that invests in above brand initiatives that actually allow for us to be, seen in a different light. And it is, I think the challenge that you run up against potentially is if your organization really doesn't have a big appetite for this type of engagement or type of work. And so you have to really have the courage to go internally, speak to leadership, talk about the why, tell them why this is important to the HCP, to the healthcare ecosystem, tell them that there is an opportunity here that will help set them and the organization apart. And I really think that you have to have some I guess courage is the word, courage to go internally and say, this is important. And if we do this, there will be an impact and there will be value to not only the HCP, but to our organization. I think this work takes time, Tom. It's not just something that happens overnight. It really is something that is a marathon and not a sprint. And these initiatives often are large projects that take many years. And so we've actually created a full team out of this work. This is not an MSL team, Tom. This is a team in medical affairs that has really come from all different backgrounds. I've got a nurse practitioner on my team. I have a physician assistant on my team, and they actually are tasked with creating educational resources for advanced practitioners in the neurology community. And we have a portal that they've developed, and they've created podcasts, they've created modules, they've created a community where they can actually have advanced practitioners join, and they network with each other. They really have created a nice community. And so again, it's not just listening to what they're saying. And in this case, the HCPs or the advanced practitioners in the neurology space were telling us that they needed more education, that often they were coming into their practice environment without a whole lot of background on the disease state. And so they needed a place to go where they could find a mentor, they could find content, they could find education, they could find community. And so we created that. And again, it took, a lot of initiative of people really showing the organization why this was important in order for them to invest in this work. And now we have over 250 advanced practitioners that are enrolled in the portal. And so it really is a value add here. It's something that is important and meaningful in the space. And it again sets the organization apart. But we had to have leadership that believed in this work. And fortunately, we do.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it. Congratulations. You guys are you're trailblazers and you guys are doing some amazing things.
Thank you. We like to think so. I'm very proud
Yeah.
of this work and
No, it's awesome.
really proud of the organization.
So I always ask, anytime I talk about KOL engagement, I always like to ask if there are any words of caution or guardrails as it relates to compliance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good question. So we wouldn't be able to do any of this work without our compliance and legal partners. And what I would encourage anyone to do if they have an idea, if they have a spark, if they've listened to their HCP and they want to come to the table with an innovative resource or an approach, an initiative, a work stream, a pilot, if you will. I think what you really need to do is engage your compliance and legal counterparts from the very beginning. Have them help you create the path forward. I call them my compliance and legal partners because they're exactly that. They're partners with me on this journey. They're partners with my team. They allow us to find the right way to move forward that, keeps the integrity of what we're trying to do at its core, but also does it in a way that keeps the organization and the work compliant. And that is incredibly important because we really need to be thoughtful about that in this current landscape and environment that we're all working in.
Yeah. And would you say, knowing that you've been in, you mentioned oncology, you also mentioned the burnout factor. Are there groups or are there therapeutic areas that this non-traditional approach may not be best for, or are there certain KOLs that you may want to take a different approach? I'm curious as to where this, if there's I don't know, if there's a group that may not be good for this.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Tom. In my experience, my team is across our enterprise, which means we work across all therapeutic areas within the scope of EMD Serono. So that's neurology, oncology, fertility, and HIV. And right now, we haven't found an area where this approach is not welcomed and it's not creating a different type of engagement approach for the organization. I'm not sure. I can't speak to other therapeutic areas because I just don't have the experience to say, for example, in cardiology or neurosurgery, that this wouldn't be valuable, right? But from what we've seen, this has really allowed us to engage in a different way. And in fact, we were at ACTRIMS, one of the congresses in the MS arena about a month ago. And one of the healthcare providers that I met with actually said, no one else is talking about these types of things. I've spent many hours in meetings throughout the course of this meeting, and no one is talking about these top kinds of topics. So for example, we have another work stream around health equity and AI, and really looking at, can AI bridge the gap in vulnerable patient populations? And so we're just getting feedback from different, healthcare providers on that journey and on the work that we're doing. We're in partnership with the Economist Impact Group on that work stream. And, the provider that we spoke to was like, this is totally novel. This is completely different than what we're engaging in conversation around with any other pharmaceutical company. And, you should be really proud of that, because it makes me really lean in and wonder what is different about what you're doing, and why are you investing in this type of work? And we are, because ultimately our mantra at EMD Serono is as one for patients. And if we can, if we can change the approach just a little bit so that we can ultimately serve patients better, then we're doing a service to everyone that we're engaging with. And so I don't see an area where this, if it's well thought out, if again, we're listening, if we're really taking the time to seek from a place of curiosity, I don't see where this could have a shortcoming. But again, it has to be genuine, and it has to be followed with action.
Mm. And how do you see this evolving? I mean, is this going to be the new norm? Is this going to be the wave of the future?
I hope so. I mean, I can only speak for EMD Serono, and I know we're incredibly committed to this journey. We again have a vision to elevate humanity and spark discovery, and that is a real that's something we take very seriously. We want to make sure that we're innovating, and this work is innovative, and I really welcome other organizations to enter into this space, enter into this journey, because it will elevate, it'll raise the bar, it will help us to think differently, to think bigger. And so I hope it's the wave of the future. I hope we continue to look for non-traditional ways to engage our HCPs, and again, create solutions that serve the whole healthcare ecosystem. I think we need this type of work. That we're in a tough time in our society, in the healthcare landscape, in the world. And if we can approach people from a deeply human perspective, really understanding what's happening in their world and their day to day, I think we'll do a better job overall in serving both the healthcare providers that we serve and their patients.
Yeah. And I want to put my recruiter hat on for a second. I am a recruiter by day, podcaster by night. I think this approach is the way people should handle their interviews. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see with job seekers is it's all about them. How is this company going to be a good fit for me? And how is this job going to be good for me? And it's not as much of, what can I do for this organization? How can I be valuable to this hiring manager? How can I prove to them that I am a fit for this position and I'm going to be good for the organization? So it goes into the same type of approach where you're focusing on the other person.
Right.
So I think it's the same concept.
It is. It is. I mean, we're all, I mean, if we don't understand what's important to those that we're interfacing with, then it's really a one-sided agenda that we're working from. And so when it's all about you, and you're never going to meet anyone else's needs or be relevant or valuable or, create meaning. And you have to have that kind of purpose as your backdrop. I think it's, seeking to understand those around you, seeking to really work from a place of, how can I support you? How can we help to make things better in an incredibly complicated, world and system? I think the beauty of it is there's so much more fulfillment in that. And I really think at the end of the day, we joke on my team, we say, we're not really working. This is not a job. We are, actually doing work that is so meaningful that it doesn't feel like a job. I have a career. I really enjoy what I do every day. I see the value in it. I'm able to surround myself with incredibly thoughtful, caring people that work incredibly hard, that are not afraid to buck the system, if you will, to challenge the status quo, and to in this incredible world of disruption that we're all faced with every day, they're finding the possibility in it. And that to me is incredible. And I think that if you could bring that perspective to an organization, if you're interviewing, and really talk about how you could show up differently in support of their mission, I really think that you could set yourself apart.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that that's the separator a lot of times with
Right,
candidates, with
right.
people that are really good at doing that.
I
Um,
completely agree. And you see it. I'm actually preparing to interview for a role right now. And I'm looking for someone who can come to the table with me and have ideas and not be afraid to push boundaries, and in the face of a no, if you will, or I don't think we can do that, or I don't know how to find a way. It's finding the way, finding the path forward, and showing the organization, showing the team that you're not afraid to push boundaries, because you understand the need so deeply that it becomes a mission for you.
yeah. All right. So last question.
Yeah.
People are listening, right? We're going to get back to MSLs now. People are listening. They're like, this is great. Can't wait to try this. I'm going to do this. Great advice. So what would you tell those folks? Like, where do they start? What advice do you have? Like, what could you tell those folks that are ready to start doing more of this if they haven't already?
Yeah. I mean, just try it. Bring your heart to work. If you get to know your HCPs as human beings, that they went into healthcare to care for people. They went into healthcare because they believe that they could make a difference, that they could, change the course of a patient's life that has potentially a chronic disease, or, something that they're battling. And our healthcare providers are struggling as well, and they're struggling in this current dynamic, in this environment. And it really is, it's incumbent upon us to go in and seek to understand, and to see them as human beings, and to genuinely hear them, to listen, and then to act. And so I encourage anyone to take this type of approach. And you'll find so much more joy in what you do, because you can align yourself to the things that are important to someone else, and it's no longer just about you. At the end of the day, we're really all seeking connection, and that's not, you will make yourself so much more relevant, and so much more, you will become a joy to interface with, and it's not just another MSL or rep or TLL, or someone coming through the door to try to take their time that's already incredibly maxed. You'll be a relief in their day. You'll be someone that they want to interface with, because they're learning from you and you're learning from them, and it's a partnership. So I encourage anyone to try just to bring their heart to work.
I'll tell you what a quote to end this conversation. Bring your heart to work.
Yeah.
Love that. Awesome. So we're going to leave it there. Lindsey, you're awesome. I appreciate
Thank you,
you. This was a
Tom.
great conversation. And as always, thank you guys for all your support. Thank you for sharing the show and for being so amazing. Couldn't do this show without you. And if you got value in this, definitely tell your friends. And we'll see you next time. Lindsey, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Tom. It was a pleasure to be here.